Allergic Adventures here with my monthly channel update for the month of October. Sitting in a slightly different place. I actually have two of these couches in here now because my eldest daughter moved home last month, so it's a bit fuller in here and they're comfy, and I have a little coffee table here, so just thought it'd be a nice change to record a video from a different angle. I'll start off how I normally start these videos with other pickups, which are basically just items that I picked up during the month that I haven't done a specific video on. This one I was with I think a couple of my daughters just in our local EB Games shop. Flicked through the second-hand Wii titles and I found this one. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it is supposed to be quite a good title, and it was only $4. It's in pretty good condition. Another reason for doing it this way is I get to use my proper Sony camera, which I'm hoping will improve the audio, lighting and also overall video quality. And you know, holding things up to the camera might focus better rather than using the webcam like I've been doing for a while. Now another one also, and these were actually brand new, not second hand, and it was only $14, and it's another Vita title. It's Marvel Superheroes. Do actually have this for the PS3. The kids have played it, but I never have, and I seem to be able to play the Lego titles if I get them for the Vita. So not in there, you don't get manual, not in there at the moment because it's actually in the Vita. Related story, last month I got the Lego movie one for the Vita. I got a bit of the way through it, but I got stuck in a particular spot and gave up on it basically, so hopefully I'll get a bit further with that one. Now next thing is actually a whole stack of magazines for quite an old computer system. One unusual one anyway. It's the Tatung Einstein, which was released in the time leading up to when the MSX machines were going to be brought into the UK, and this particular machine was made in the UK, I believe in Wales actually, same place as is the Dragon made in Wales. People can correct me if I'm wrong. And it's quite a solid machine. It was MSX-like but not MSX compatible. But an interesting thing that when they came out, they actually had 3-inch floppy drives in them as well, and a nice full travel keyboard. I don't actually have an original Einstein. I have one of the follow-up machines called an Einstein 256, which is sort of an MSX2 machine. Once again, it's got similar chips, but it's not compatible. It was an interesting choice that they went that way. But anyway, this is a bundle of magazines. They're Tatung Einstein user ones, and they were sold in a bundle. There's been some of these sold individually, but they're being sold all the time for about £6, and then when you add you know, a couple of pounds postage all the way over, it made it too much. Whereas this whole bundle, I think I got it for about £25 delivered. It might have been a little bit more than that, I can't remember. Now there are some repeats, so I've got I'm sure I had issue 1. Obviously haven't picked that up. I do have issue 1. I have 2 copies of issue 2. We have issue 4, so this is volume 1 issue 4, and this is the second year, so volume 2 issue 1. I'm just going to show the covers and we might flip through one. Volume 2 issue 2, so they're quite well, you know, good quality put together ones. Volume 2 issue 3, and I got 2 of that one. Volume 2 issue 4, so it was basically quarterly, so that's 2 years worth. And I've read up to the, I'm reading the second one of the second year at the moment. Volume 3 number 1. Volume 3 number 4. So obviously I've got a couple of gaps. but interesting to see how it changes over time. Volume 4, number 1. And last but not least is Volume 4, number 2. Well, since I've got this one in my hand, and it's a bit thicker one, I mean, what I might do, if people are interested, I might do some, flip through videos of these, or maybe just sit there and type in a listing or two. So it's very inside, they're all very much open format. There is sometimes, I think these later ones, obviously the printing stock has gone down a little bit actually, probably the later times trying to keep it going. It's got a few articles in there, it's interestingly written. It is definitely a different style. As I said, I haven't read this one because it's further down in the stack. Definitely a different style of printing, and in this one there's lots of listings, which I always like having a bit of a go at typing some of those in. We'll go back to one of the early ones. Yeah, see, like the early ones were actually printed in colour. There we go. So, getting the printed material for the various old retro systems is a particular thing that I like to do, because it allows you to just sit down with some of the books or magazines with a particular retro system and go through those, and it's as if you were experiencing the computer how it would have been experienced back in the day. So it just adds that extra bit of nostalgia for me with the systems, and it's also an interesting way to find out about all of them. Not all of these systems that I have, as at a recent count I have 105 retro computers and consoles. That does include handhelds. And I'm not an expert in every single one of them, so because I didn't grow up with all of them. Some of them were just machines that I would have liked to have had back in the day. But I mean, I have used a fair few of them. Alright, we'll put those down. And some more pickups. Now these next two are related to my constant project to upgrade my currently 2 arcade machines that are sitting directly behind the camera looking at the moment. So we have my original vertical orientation cabinet, and as a little bit of an upgrade for that one, I'll probably do up a little mini arcade for my friend actually as part of this upgrade, but it's actually the newer version of the Vertical Game Board Arcade Classics. Now the one I have has 48 games in it. Sorry, here's the board. Here they're a very nice self-contained circuit board, and you can just plug them straight into a VGA monitor and sound out, but they are a full jammer compatible there, so you just plug a jammer harness into that, and away you don't need anything else, away you go. Otherwise you power them by here and it'll come out here, but then you have to wire in your controls. Now this one, interesting, does have the connectors for a trackball. I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to add a trackball to the control panel of my Vertical, because it's not a very wide machine, but I am going to build a trackball into the new multi-build that I'm working on at the moment. Now, the game list, so these first few pages are on the original board, so there's no change there. The camera is picking these up. Here's the next 2 pages, so all of these are on the original board, and they're quite good games. Now, so this next one, the page on this side are the new games, so I'll just hold it up so you can see first. So on this one we have Puyan, which is an excellent game. Pleiades, or Pleiades, I'm not sure how you pronounce it now. Gunsmoke, I'm quite looking forward to that one. Played that one in the YouTubers high score challenge, that was good fun. The End, looks like it's based on Phoenix hardware. 1943 Kai, Congo Bongo, and Jumping Jack. So not a tremendous number of extra games, but the board wasn't very expensive, has a lot more features, and just thought I'd upgrade mine and my friend who needs an arcade cabinet, I'd give him the 48-1 and he'll be perfectly happy with that, and I get an upgrade at the same time. I mean, this board has some of my favourite Vertical games on it, like Time Pilot and Gyrus and 1942, and even Mappy is good fun. Actually, I'm not 100. My original board, I'm sure it doesn't have Arkanoid on it, so I will be will maybe add a spinner to that cabinet. Maybe that might be a good idea. Oh, and you know, it's got things like Juno First and Mooncrester on, which are always worth having a go at. So you know, it makes the cabinet worthwhile to turn on and have a go. Right, and one more box from China. I am still missing one more component to proceed with the build, but I have started building my panel. The one component I'm missing is the jammer to PC harness that I ordered. It's basically a little circuit board that allows you to pretty much plug it into the PC and then plug a jammer harness, a jammer connector straight into it. I'm having a 2 jammer inside this cabinet, so that will allow 2 jammer devices to one harness. The second jammer device will be my 1 slot MVS. So I'll have the 1 slot MVS with my 161 cartridge in there. Plus hopefully one day I'll get a couple of real MVS cartridges and I can just plug them in there. And then the other half will be a MAME setup on a PC, but properly wired into the jammer harness. It's going to have a trackball in the middle, and I've allowed enough room that I can always add a spinner control later, but I'm not adding a spinner at this stage. Spinners are actually quite expensive. And I thought, well, I'm building a new control board, and this whole box of bits was basically $20 US. It has 2 very nice zippy sticks. You can remove the tops as well, and it has a nice cover to go over the thing. So I've got 2 of those, and a whole lot of lighted buttons that are blue, yellow, red, green, a pack of LEDs to go in them as well, bulbs. There's a couple of miscellaneous buttons like your player 1 and your player 2, they're obviously not lighted. Now I was going to do a 8 button, but at the end of the day I don't do fighters very much. I only need 4 buttons for the MVS, so I've gone for a complete MVS style 4 button with on the slight gradual slope. The trackball's in the middle of the cabinet. So that's how my configuration is going to be. I am videotaping myself as I'm gradually working on that control board, so there will be a video on that a little bit further down the track. As an example, this last weekend, the only thing I got time for was to finish cutting the panel out and to drill the holes in it for all of the buttons and the joysticks. And I didn't even get time to drill the hole for the trackball. I got my router out to do the edges, got interrupted, and then didn't get back to it. So I didn't even get my router assembled. So I need to route out underneath where the trackball's going, so it's recessed in a little bit. So obviously the actual trackball will stick out at the top of the cabinet enough, and I need to route around the edges just to make it rather than square, so we have a rounded edge. But I'll videotape all that, then I'm going to paint it black, and then I'll start assembling it. And make a video, might put it in a couple of parts and things like that. So the arcade cabinet project is progressing, and I'm hopefully, I'm hoping to have that finished in the next month, if at all possible. At the very least, even if that other last piece doesn't arrive, I want to get it up and running so I can play the 1 slot MVS. Because that's been sitting over there for far too long, and I really like my MVS games and I want to play them. Now on to our next topic. Recently I did my 1500 subscriber Q&A and competition video, and I've been absolutely overwhelmed and overjoyed at the response to that video. I've already had over 50 entries into the competition, which is fantastic. Each one of those people either making a video response or posting 3 questions to enter into the competition and of course go towards my Q&A. And that's a lot of questions to ask, and I'm actually quite pleased at the variety of the questions too. I don't think there's been one repeat amongst all of them. Everybody's thought a lot about the questions, so I'm actually really looking forward to answering all of those. So thank you to everybody who has asked a question so far. As I mentioned in that video, I'll keep the competition open till the 24th of November. So I'll post a link down below to that video. If you want to enter, you need to go comment on that particular video. But I will start answering the Q&A questions later this week, because obviously I'm not going to be able to answer them all in one video, otherwise we'd be going for a while. So I'll have to break it up into, maybe keep it to about 15 minutes per video, make it easier for people to watch. We'll just see how many questions I get through and what time. So I might sit down for half an hour when I've got half an hour, record some questions, and I may break that up into 1 or 2 episodes at a time. But I'm really looking forward to answering those, so I thank everybody once again for asking lots of interesting questions. And as I mentioned at the time, helping me get rid of some of my doubles, so be interesting to see who wins and who gets to receive some of my doubles. Now, a quick little homebrew update. I don't have anything tremendously solid to post or show you pictures of. I'll include a little bit of footage if I can. My next homebrew that will be released will be a full version of Meteor Swarm, which is one of my original games from back in the day, but ported over to the NES. Now, this Meteor Swarm was included as one of the 3 mini games on the competition cart for the Play Expo. And by the way, there still are copies of that cartridge available. You need to contact CollectorVision directly for that. I'll put their website link down below. They are furiously working away on a new website where you'll actually be able to do proper online ordering, which will help a lot for all these homebrew titles, because they actually do have quite a few titles available right now that people, unless you're on Atari age or went to one of the expos, you possibly don't know about. So obviously they mostly are for the ColecoVision, but there are ones for the Intellivision as well. And they're working obviously on, they have a Nintendo mold now and a Super Nintendo cartridge shell as well. So there'll be titles for all of those systems coming up. Anyway, so not to get too off topic of my own thing, so I'm converting Meteor Swarm. It's already running on the NES, but for an individual cartridge, you're going to have a couple of options, so you can choose between shields and hyperspace, number of lives and starting level, obviously title screen and things like that, and it'll come with a box and a manual and everything like that. Don't have the artwork for that. Hopefully we'll have the artwork to show you next month. Also, I am helping out, I think I mentioned this last month, I'm helping out with the Justice Beaver team, working on the Justice Beaver game for the Super Nintendo. Now, I didn't necessarily have the intention of jumping up to 16-bit development just yet, because obviously I was concentrating on my Let's Make a Retro Play game series, concentrating on the 8-bits, but the Super Nintendo is actually quite similar architecture in a lot of ways to the Nintendo. I suppose they did it on purpose so programmers who are used to programming the NES could make the necessary leap up to the Super Nintendo. Now, quite obviously the Super Nintendo has far greater graphics capabilities, but that is all done in the particular custom graphics chip and sound chip that comes with the Super Nintendo. And they're actual separate processors. They didn't actually upgrade the main processor of the Super Nintendo very much at all, and I would actually be hesitant to actually call the Super Nintendo's main processor a 16-bit processor. It's in the same boat as the PC Engine. The main processor in the PC Engine is only an 8-bit chip, and I pretty much say the chip that's in the Super Nintendo is only an 8-bit as well. So, but it does have more features than the Nintendo does, so it is easier natively able to do 16-bit maths. But on my side of the fence, the Z80 is able to do 16-bit maths, so just because a processor can do 16-bit maths natively doesn't make it a 16-bit processor. So it's been interesting having a look at that system. And funnily enough, it's also spurred my interest in the Super Nintendo. I mean, I have had a Super Nintendo since new, and I had a few games when I was running my shop, but unfortunately I had to shut my shop down when my first child was born, and I sold off all my Super Nintendo games except for my Star Wars ones, and you know, I never really, because I was running a shop at the time, I never really properly got to play the system besides Donkey Kong Land, Sim City, and even I've lost the name of the game now. One of the adventure games that I'd really like to get back someday. I never finished it because somebody talked me out of it and I sold it to them at the time. And I didn't have very many other games because they were very expensive, and being a small retailer, we couldn't get any discounts when we ordered the stock, and so like you were selling a game back then for like $90 or even $100, and you weren't even making $10. So that means to have that thing on the shelf, you actually had a lot of money tied up in that stock. So never had very much stock, so never had very many games for it, and it sat in a drawer for years, and I kept it because I liked those, you know, Super Star Wars and Super Empire Strikes Back games. Yeah, it's one of the systems I haven't really got into in a big way, but I have been looking more at titles that have come up on the cheap for it. So I may get some all Japanese ones, though, of course. I'm not even looking at PAL or American ones. So there might be a few Super Nintendo pickups in the future, just simply due to my interest in the system at the moment. Now, I also, during the month, just doing some spare hours here and there when I was sick of working on other things, I did actually get out my version of Sequest 99, which is a port of the Atari 2600 game Sequest, which is one of my favourite games on the Atari 2600, to the TI-99 chipset. That's why it's called Sequest 99. So it will run on a Coleco MSX and a regional Spectrum. So I've dusted that off and I've done a little bit more work to it, but I mean, basic mechanics: you can move the ship around, you can shoot, the enemy subs spawn. The main extra work that I've done is I've done all of the other sprite and graphic shapes of the fish and the divers you're supposed to be rescuing, and the sub that's on the surface that you have to avoid. And the score works and the oxygen counter works, all those sort of little things. No sound effects or music, although funnily enough, something I normally do last is a title screen, and this one actually has a title screen, so if I remember when I'm editing, I may flash up some screenshots there for you. Now, as I said, not answering a question in this particular video because a community question, because I'm about to do all these Q&As, and I think that will do, and I've probably rambled on long enough in this particular video. So coming up, let's make a retro game, the second part of learning Z80 instructions. I have written that episode now and I'm happy with the instruction sheet. That's where I start. I'm working on the PowerPoint presentation part of the sheet. I mean, it's all the samples and everything done. I've actually already got the article loaded onto my content system on my website, just not published. So that episode probably be next weekend when I record that. I have an A to Z of my MSX, and episodes of that is already recorded and will be published. And that's the interesting letter of letter Q, which was a very interesting pick. And I'll probably next weekend record R, so that's ready to go in between other videos. There are definitely some more pickups. I'm actually missing a rather large box from Japan that had to come slow freight due to a larger item in it. Probably when that arrives, I'm not going to do plays on every single game and things, and there's lots of bibs and bobs. I might just do a big pickup video and then follow up with some selective gameplays and things afterwards. And of course, Q&As. I need to get into the Q&As, so they will start later in the week when I get a chance to sit down and record them. Probably my Thursday night I'll sit down and have a recording session, depending on how many of my kids I have to take from point A to point B and pick them up and things. Alright, thank you for listening to my waffle. I'm Electric Adventures. Thanks to all my subscribers, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.